Is Texas Playboys right here at KPFT in Wide Open Spaces. You know, starting this weekend in Galveston at the 1894 Opera House, 25 actors and musicians will hit the stage to bring you the first ever play about the life and music of Mr. Bob Wills. One of the writers and performers just happened to stop by Wide Open Spaces this morning to tell us all about it. 9-time Grammy Award winner, Mr. Ray Benson.
Wow, 9-time. Hello.
Welcome. How you doing this morning?
Hello, Houston.
You're not in town to do anything. Well, you were on TV this morning here in town,
We're
is that
on
right?
TV. We're multimedia freaks, yes.
And you're heading back to Austin this afternoon.
Yes, we'll go back to Austin and play a show and then head down to Galveston for 4 shows at the beautiful Grand Theater, Opera, what do they call it?
1894 Grand Opera House. There you go.
And what a place. It is such a great place. Y'all know that.
And this will be your 3rd time to bring this performance to the Grand.
Yes. This year we'll be doing a ride with Bob at the Grand here. Then in August we'll be in Ruidoso at the Spencer Theater. October we'll be in Claremore, Oklahoma, and on the week after Christmas we'll be in Richardson, Texas.
Wow.
We figured that's a dead week, isn't it? Nobody does, 28th, 29th, 30th, and New Year's Eve. So we figured we'll do the play when everybody's sick of watching football.
There you go. Throw in a couple country songs, Christmas songs. You'll be all right.
Christmas is over by the 28th.
Well, people still celebrate to the 1st. Now, you were one of the founding members of Asleep at the Wheel, and that dates back to 1969 when you were just a teenager, and Lucky Oceans was one of the founding members as well. Was he a big Bob Wills fan as well?
He was more into Chicago blues, but that's how we got to Bob, was through roots music. We used to go look for 78s, and I was into jazz and big band and blues and rock and roll and everything, and stumbled upon this kind of music that kind of incorporated all of it, and that's how we got started. In West Virginia is where we started.
Okay.
West by God, Virginia.
Now, you talked to Commander Cody right about the time you guys got started, and he's from Michigan, and he relocated to California, and he kind of convinced you to move to California as well. Is that right?
Yeah. I was at school at Antioch College, which is back in business again. It was out of business for a couple of years. A great college, though. I lasted all the 6 months. Commander Cody came through and played. Taj Mahal came through and played, and I just knew I wanted to start a band. I'd played music since I was 9 years old. Professionally, and so it was like, well, we got to do this.
And how long did you last in California before Willie Nelson convinced you to move to Austin?
We were there for about 3.5 years, 3 years. And Willie and Doug saw him. It was Doug saw him. Of course, he told everybody to move to Texas, but Willie actually put us on shows and said, "Hey, I'll put you on shows. Pay you $100 a night." And that was wonderful. We came to Liberty Hall here in 1973, early 1973. Played at Liberty Hall on Chenevert Street, and just loved it. This was such a great scene here, and. Played there with, I think Springsteen came in the week after us.
Right.
And then we played the Armadillo, and then in Dallas, Mother Blues. And then we would do the great KPFT Cosmic Cowboy benefits.
Right.
And,
we have some old posters of those.
Yeah, they were incredible at Hofheinz Pavilion, I think is where it was.
Right.
And so, we got here and as quick as we could, as the saying goes.
Right. Now, right around that time in the early 70s when the band is kind of getting started here, you almost met Bob Wills. Tell that story. Yeah,
we had made a record for United Artists Records, and Tommy Alsop was our producer. He had been Buddy Holly's lead guitar player, and he had been in Western Swing bands before that. And he went to the guy who signed us and said, "Hey, Bob Wills is still alive and would like to make another well, they didn't know it was the last album, but another album." Merle Haggard, who was the #1 country singer at the time, said he'd be on it. And so they said, "Come on up and meet Bob Wills." So we drove up to the Dallas. And he was in a wheelchair, and they said, "This is Asleep at the Wheel," and Ray Benson, and Bob was just kind of out of it. He kind of slumped in his wheelchair, and they said, "Mr. Wills is tired. You can talk to him tomorrow." So they took him back to his hotel room. Well, later that night he had a stroke and went into a coma and died 2 years later.
Wow.
So I met Bob Wills, but we never talked to him. So when we got to doing this, a good friend of mine named Sarah Bird, who's a wonderful author, and Ann Rapp, who is a screenwriter. We sat down to discuss doing this play to commemorate his 100th birthday. And I told her that story, and Sarah said, well, there's your play, the conversation you never had with Bob Wills. Well, she was busy with some things and couldn't do it, so Ann Rapp and I sat down, and since we knew nothing about writing a play, we wrote a play.
Right. And it started in Austin.
Yeah, at the Little State Theater, and we figured we'd do it that week for Bob Wills' 100th birthday anniversary. Right. And it was really so good, honestly. We were rather surprised ourselves. HEB had sponsored the play for us and enabled us to hire some really talented people in the theater business down there in Austin. So we went, gosh, we got to do this again, And 7 years later, we're still doing it. Although not regularly, we do it when we can.
Sure. And you've taken it all across Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, San Francisco. You even played in Washington, D.C. at the Kennedy Center, where George W. Bush showed up to see the performance.
Yeah, Laura Bush actually hosted it for us. She's a wonderful lady, and she did it, and so she dragged her husband in.
Right. Now, you're bringing this to the Grand Opera House, and I tried to do a little research on the Opera House itself, and I know that during the 30s and 40s, it was called the Martini Theater, and I couldn't find out if Bob Wills actually ever played there. Do you know anything about that?
It might have been a little highbrow for Bob at the time. He mostly played dances.
Okay.
The Western swing music was based on dance music, and of course, still today, Texas is one of the last vestiges of dancing, in the United States. So he might have, but he played every little place around Texas, that's for sure. The very interesting thing about it, which we do cover in the play, is the history of Bob Wills is such that he was run out of Texas by W. Lee O'Daniels. You all know the history of Texas. Pappy plays Past the Biscuits, Pappy O'Daniels, and one of our, in a line of really great corrupt governors, which continues today.
Nice.
He ran Bob Wills out of Texas. He ran the Burris Mill and it was the biggest flour company. Back then everybody baked. Store-bought bread was a luxury, really, and women all baked at home. So the flour sponsors were a big deal. And Burris Mills and flour were the light crust doughboys, and Bob and Milton Brown were both in the band. And so they quit because W. L. Daniels was making them work in the mill and play the shows. So he said, first they went to Waco. Well, O'Daniel had the advertiser for the station. He said, you got this guy Bob Wills, I'm pulling my advertising. So they left. They went to Oklahoma City. Same thing happened. They had to go to Tulsa, and that's why Bob Wills wound up in Tulsa, was because W. Lee Daniels ran him out of Texas.
Okay, and he's buried there, and I was curious why. And so I guess that probably has something to do with it.
Oh yeah. Tulsa was, and then he went to California after the war. People talk about the Great Dust Bowl migration. Well, the Great Migration after the war was even bigger, because all of these guys that got out of the Army and the Navy and whatever in the war, and California was a Garden of Eden, as they say.
Mm-hmm.
So many Texans and Oklahomans and Arkansas, not just the Dust Bowl variety, moved out there, and the ones that had been there. So Bob Wills went out there in 1945, and he was like Elvis out there. It was huge, and we lived in California before Texas, and that's where I met so many of these guys that had played with Bob Wills. In Sacramento, in 1949, he moved to Sacramento and opened Wills Point. So, Bob was west of the Mississippi was huge,
Sure.
He also did a lot of movies, which he hated to do, and we go through the whole thing in the Bob Wills play, and it's a really fascinating story. If it was just a guy who made records and played music, it'd be one thing. But Bob Wills set a style and a tone that was so pervasive in country music and pop music.
Mm-hmm.
San Antonio Rose was a million-seller record for Bing Crosby and Bob Wills. Minnie Pearl told me stories about when Bob Wills came to Nashville in the mid-'40s. After he left, every country hillbilly got a cowboy hat and a western suit and a bus and electric guitar. He was an amazing influence and an outrageous figure. He makes Mick Jagger and Keith Richards look tame.
Mm-hmm. Right. Now, do you actually play the character yourself?
No. Jason Roberts plays. We have 3 Bob Wills.
Right.
We have a 9-year-old boy who plays, and those of you who've seen the play before, we always have a young Bob Wills who plays a 10-year-old Bob Wills. Well, after 7 or 8 years, some of them grow up. So this is the 4th kid Bob Wills who plays the fiddle, and this Colby Shepard from Madisonville is brand new and is just wonderful.
Amazing.
And then Jason Roberts plays the main Bob Wills, and Marco Perello plays the ghost of Bob Wills.
Okay.
And that's and then the band, Asleep at the Wheel, plus 2 or 3 horn players, including Dave Alexander, who has his own band. We are the Texas Playboys, and there's 25 actors, dancers, musicians that tell the whole story.
Now, when you started it in 2005, is it 25 strong then as well? Or is it
no, it was about 35, and we figured we didn't need all those other people. We had seriously, it was, we learned a lot about theater. Well, doing it in Austin was no big deal, but when you travel, everybody's got to travel and have a hotel. So, and most of those other people were just sort of set dressing, you know. So we also rewrote the second act. Ann Rapp is a wonderful writer. She co-wrote the play with me. She's out there with Billy Bob Thornton right now doing a movie, but she wrote Cookie's Fortune for Galtman and Dr. Tina Women for Altman, and she's been script supervisor on dozens and dozens of films, everything from Spinal Tap to Spielberg. She's worked for all of them and is a wonderful writer, and grew up in Esteline, Texas, which is 20 minutes from Bob Wills' family farm out there in West Texas. So
great.
She knew the material.
Awesome. Well, Ray, appreciate you stopping by. Anything else we need to focus on? I know that there's a performance on Friday night at 8 o'clock. There's one at 3 o'clock on Saturday, another one at 8 o'clock on Saturday night, and then there's a Sunday matinee at 3.
Yes, sir. It's 4 shows there in Galveston. We encourage everybody to come down. It'll be a while before we ever get back this area, so we encourage everybody to come. And just so happy to see KPFT still on the air after, let's see, I've been here, 38 years ago?
41 KPFT started, yeah.
And so it's a real treasure in the community, and we're just glad, you have your ups and downs, and public radio is always a tough go, but the folks in Houston support it, and your folks here, you're lucky to have it. So keep the dial on here on 90.1, is it? You're the best. Oh, well, we're going to knock on your door for a benefit show for us here soon. We always do, don't we? Hey, listen, without this kind of radio, the status of radio today is such a mess that it really is. Unless you want to pay for it, these are the great ones, and that's why your contributions are so needed. And congratulations on 40-some odd years. It's amazing. That's an incredible story. I remember I was on KPFA in Berkeley. In Berkeley, back when we were out there, and I know they had a mess out there, kind of thing. But yeah, public radio has its highs and lows. We're the only radio station to be bombed off the air and broadcast history. Wow. By the Klan back in 1970. Is that right? And twice. It happened twice. Yeah. Well, look who's still around. Yeah, isn't that great? Yeah, right. Hey, great to see you. Nice to meet you. Well, thanks for taking time out of your day. Appreciate it, and we'll see you all in Galveston. All right. Starts this Friday night. Once again, that is a Ride with Bob, and it's at the 1894 Opera House. Oh yes, and you can get info at either sleepatthewheel.com or aridewithbob.com, or I'm sure the Grand has a. If you type this in Google, you'll get it. 100, yeah, you will, which I did this morning. Or any other search engine you might want. Ray Benson, thanks again, and we're going to go out. You want to introduce this song? This is actually this was really cool. Yeah, this is we do this song in the play, but this version of it was written by Cindy Walker, and this version is on our album Ride with Bob, which is different from A Ride with Bob. But this is Willie Nelson, Asleep at the Wheel, and the Manhattan Transfer in a lush version of Going Away Party. I could have been a disc jockey.
Well, you're on the TV.